what if having high serotonin in general makes you generally more aware of and in tune with the tribal dynamics? What if it increases that tribal awareness? What if it increases your tendency to compare yourself to the others around you and think to yourself, am I above them or am I below them?
Hi, welcome to the Rejuvenate podcast, and I'm your host, Chrissy Hawks, along with my co-host, Elwin Robinson. And today we are carrying on the conversation about feeling good. So, Elwin, do you want to tell everyone why we are continuing the conversation?
Because I'm not very concise, apparently, and we didn't talk about everything that we needed to. So, yeah, I'm not going to do a recap because it's hard to recap. So just you got to watch the previous episode. Really, this is going to end up being part 2. And also, as soon as we try and limit how long these calls are, Chrissy, how long these recordings are, and we got to the 2-hour mark. We were like, all right, that's enough. And then as soon as we ended, you started asking me loads more questions about everything, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, these are actually really good questions. We should have these in the recording. And then afterwards, I started thinking about, oh God, I didn't talk about this, and I forgot about this, and I didn't mention this. So we decided, okay, I don't like to do part 2s. I like to get it all in one episode, but unfortunately, I think we're going to have to. And you know what? Maybe it's not unfortunate because it's a really interesting topic, and maybe it's the most important topic of all, right? Because health is obviously fantastic. But again, what's the point if you're not happy? What's the point if you're not enjoying life? So anything that helps with that. And of course, this is a subject we could do a whole, podcast series on forever, right? I mean, there's so many avenues to feeling good in terms of lifestyle, in terms of habits, in terms of attitudes, in terms of spiritual practices, religions, philosophies. We're not doing any of that. All we're doing is the biochemistry, but it's still a big topic. So, where would you like to start?
Well, let's see. We talked about dopamine in the last episode. We talked about GABA and optimizing there. Can we go to one of the other big guns, serotonin? And can we delve deeper into that? Is serotonin really good? Because out there, yes, it's supposed to be good. It's linked to, why people are depressed, things like that. So I want to get your thoughts, views on your deep dives into serotonin.
Absolutely. All right. So before I say this, I'll have to say, this is not settled for me. So what I'm going to be sharing is preliminary, but I have to say that since taking on this particular belief system, I have been feeling a hell of a lot better. And a bunch of my lab markers have improved, specifically in the area of hormones, actually. Now, there could be other reasons for that. I'm not saying it's the only thing that I've changed, but it is a significant thing, as you'll see when we get to it. So the person whose work really tipped me off to this is a guy called Ray Peat. He is kind of like an iconoclast or something, like in the health world. He basically kind of challenged a lot of basic fundamental presuppositions about, the reality of things. He was a professor in the world of biochemistry, and he's got a little bit of a cult following these days. I do not agree with everything, neither endorse everything that he says. He says some pretty crazy recommendations, I would say, like eat as much sugar as you want, caffeine is great, have as much as possible, stuff like that. And I understand where he's coming from. I feel like, so his thing was all about improving the metabolism. Now, that's not where I got the metabolism stuff from. I've been on to that for quite a while now. And so when I came across his work, it was interesting to see him really agreeing and confirming 100% that optimizing thyroid function and optimizing metabolism is one of the key things about health. But I was interested, he has a few other things to say, some of which I think are really valid. And one of them is about this thing related to serotonin. Now, to be honest, I still would not have given what he said credence if it weren't for the experience that I'd had personally. So you and I, Chrissy, both used to be part of a group that would research various research chemicals in terms of what we're talking about here, optimizing feeling good neurochemicals. And so we would often get to the point in that where we would feel like by the end of it, we'd feel really not good. And this was always blamed on being over serotonized. What's the problem? Too much serotonin. And so, and this was like a peculiar combination of symptoms. And to be honest, when it was told to me back then, I was always a bit skeptical of it. I didn't really understand it. I didn't believe it. I thought, it was like it was something else that was going on. But then looking at Ray Peat's work, and obviously not just his opinion, there's study after study after study about this. And I know that because this is a controversial thing, I'm going to say I am going to have to give studies, and I will. I'll give as much as we can fit in YouTube description field before it says it's too much. Apparently that's an issue, but I'll put in dozens if I can. There's dozens of links that I can personally give. There's thousands of studies that back up these points. So this is not fringe is what I want to say. This is not like a lot of alternative therapy stuff where, it's just a person's opinion and maybe clinical experience, but there's no research to back up. There's actually loads of research to back this point up. So what point? The point that serotonin is actually perhaps not really that beneficial in most cases, that most people have an issue with an excess rather than a deficiency, that it's actually a stress chemical rather than an anti-stress chemical, which is what pretty much everyone says, and that you'd be better off minimizing it as much as possible in most cases. So that's a pretty extreme opinion. It flies in the face of a lot of what is taught. I mean, in Genetic Insights, because everything in Genetic Insights is 100% mainstream, 100%, backed by rigorous scientific thinking, and we're not going to deviate from that because we need that to stay, approved by the powers that be. So, in Genetic Insights, we still recommend like serotonin precursors, like 5-HTP. And I've not stopped selling it at the point of recording in this video yet, because I don't know if this is true for sure. I'm getting to the perspective that perhaps it's not good to have high serotonin, and therefore a serotonin precursor is not a great idea. But I'm still on the journey of discovery of this. But anyway, back to those experiments.
Question. Yeah, I do have a question. You can throw it in as and when it's the right appropriate time. But we did have a conversation on a previous episode about serotonin being linked to the hierarchical chain of, because it's, around safety.
Totally.
And exactly. And so, where you are in the dominance and the alpha. So can you also weave that into the conversation as well?
I definitely will. That'll be the part of the conversation where I'm going to speculate. So I want to do the research first, and then I'm going to speculate as to try and reconcile that, because you're right. There is, a lot of research in that regard as well. Absolutely. That the most dominant part of a troop or pack or whatever, a group of animals, tends to have higher serotonin. The least dominant tends to have lower. That serotonin tells you that it's safe to eat, that it's safe to act in a dominant manner. So that's interesting as well. So yeah, let me go back to the clinical experience we had, trying these various things, because I was about to say it was interesting that the signs and effects of what was called an excess of serotonin never really made sense to me, because they would be extreme. On one hand, it would mean if you feel lethargic, tired, foggy, depressed, low in energy, like it was that end of the scale, the stuff that you might associate more with the dorsal vagal mode. But on the other hand, sometimes in some ways, and it would literally swing back and forth, it would also make us, those testing, a lot agitated, irritable, aggressive, not so much anxious, I would say, but maybe anxious, but more like aggressive and like maybe domineering and pushy. And so you kind of swing between like megalomania would be one way of putting it, like where you think you know everything best, and then deep levels of self-doubt, I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, I don't know anything, and you'd swing between those two poles. And so both of those things were described as being excess serotonin, and it never really made sense to me with the chemists that we were working with. But anyway, then I look at the research, which followers of Ray Peat talk about, and then I'll read a bunch of symptoms here, and then I'll give a study for every single one. So some of the symptoms of excess serotonin: tiredness and lethargy, even chronic fatigue syndrome, overexcitation, being too easily distractive, impulsive. Oh yeah, that's something you used to have a lot. Restless, overthinking, rigid thinking. So being too black and white, like I know, or like it's only one way of doing things. Mental inflexibility. This article points out that a lot of people would say that's not true because psychedelics flood you with serotonin, and yet they do the opposite of making your thinking rigid. If anything, you could say they make it too open. But the thing is that most of the benefits of psychedelics are how you feel afterwards. And in fact, after taking psychedelics, some of the key serotonin receptors are actually blocked for quite a while, for several weeks or months afterwards. So even though you had a flood of serotonin during that experience, you then have less serotonin activation for the weeks and months afterwards, which is where people often feel the benefits. So again, you may buy that argument, you may not, but at least you can say, okay, well, it's not 100% clear that serotonin is giving any of those benefits that are ascribed to psychedelics. Carry on the list: depression, sadness, feeling down, reduced cognitive function. Narcissistic is really interesting. Again, there's a study for this. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. Delusions of grandeur, fantasizing about power, exaggerated sense of self-importance, requiring constant affirmation. So yeah, those are definite signs of narcissism. I really believe, this is a tangent, but we talked about it, I can't remember if it's one of these recordings or another one, but how narcissistic personality disorder is one of the banes of our existence. Psychopathy actually is another one of the symptoms of excess serotonin. And again, I found this hard to believe when I saw this. I checked the study, read through it. My God, it's actually true. Increased serotonin relates to increased psychopathic behavior. So narcissism and psychopathy, not only... it's funny, like, they say, especially with psychopathy, it's almost hard to categorize it as a mental illness because by definition, a mental illness is only a mental illness if it makes you unhappy. Like if you do not want to be that way. The issue of people who are psychopathic is they think they're great. They think that they're better than everyone else. They don't want treatment. If they're forced to go to treatment through, either that or jail, they will, mess the therapist around as much as possible and run rings around them and avoid getting anywhere and sabotage it as much as possible. Like they do not want it. And to be honest, usually this is the same with people with narcissistic personality disorder as well. They don't want it. Now, there's an argument to be made of people with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, that they are suffering deep inside. But there's still like such a belief, like having to hold on to this thing of I'm superior, I'm better than everyone else, I'm the only one that matters, or the rest of it, which is usually to be honest, ascribed to a wound deep in childhood, usually when they're, very young, like 1-2 years old, some extreme abandonment, extreme abuse. But whatever, the fact that these symptoms are exacerbated by serotonin was very interesting to me because it's not treatable otherwise. This is the thing. I studied this in great detail. I can't remember if we talked about it in one of the previous episodes. I think we might have done. But the kind of conclusion that I had come to with that is that, you kind of, if you're not that, which most people aren't still, thank God, in this stage, it's better to just remove those people from your life or minimize contact as much as possible. And that is the advice given by those who specialize in this area. That's what they say. If you have to be in contact with them because of, you both have a child together or something like that, then you just try and be as, I think they call it grey rock, like as unengaged as possible with, okay, yep, like no getting involved because they'll find a way to upset you if you let them, to drag you into their thing. So anyway, to go, oh, maybe there is a treatment and maybe it's reducing serotonin. That was very interesting to me. I have not been able to pursue this because, as I said, I've got all these people out of my life. But if I end up having one as a client again, because I don't spot it, maybe that would be what I'd recommend for them. Strategies to reduce serotonin and see how they feel. I would say, even though I don't have narcissistic personality disorder, I have traits of it. And I think, I've learned traits because I would say, one of my parents had that issue. And so I find that since reducing serotonin, my tendency to express those traits has been less. So I've found that it's helped me personally to be less that way as well. So anyway, bit of a tangent, but like an important one. Again, if you have someone in your life who has that, don't go around trying to treat them, like it's probably it's probably not going to work. But anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting to know. Other things. So anhedonia, apathy. So that's like the dorsal vagal state.
Yeah, I was going to say if you could, I don't know.
Yeah.
Define that word for us.
Sorry. Anhedonia means, so hedonia is like pleasure seeking. So anhedonia is inability to experience joy, inability to experience pleasure.
And that's related to excess serotonin.
Yeah, it's another sign of it. Yeah, sorry, I'm going back to the list. Overly analytical, cynical, like doesn't look at the bright side. Wanting to be left alone, like wanting to push everyone away. That's definitely one that I relate to. Non-assertive, and have had less since I've reduced serotonin. Can be rude and aggressive and pushy, but not assertive. That's the interesting thing. So again, they'll swing between the extremes. On one hand, I won't say anything. I don't want to upset anyone. But then they'll be like there's not that in between. Just no, thank you, right? Or can I please have? Like it's either like holding in all this resentment and then like exploding again. Serotonin. And again, I realize all of these people might be skeptical as they're hearing this, so I'm going to put all the links to every single assertion I'm making here. OCD. Now, obviously, OCD is related to low dopamine because dopamine is the thing that helps you focus, but there is an excess serotonin component to it as well. Being passive aggressive and aversive. So again, rather than just saying what you want or don't want, like doing it in what's the word? Non-direct way. More impulsivity, less concern with the consequences of bad decisions. Anticipation anxiety. So this is where you have this kind of belief that things are going to go wrong and that they're a big deal. When I see someone walk around acting like everything's a big deal, I suspect high serotonin now. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, the opposite, I guess, is stoicism, right? Nothing is a big deal. Or, in fact, even maybe in, Zen enlightenment type of thing, right? This too shall pass, right? So I'd say that kind of Zen state is more GABA, this too shall pass. Yeah. Whereas this is a big deal, that's a big deal, that's more serotonin. That's my understanding. Excess
there'll be
serotonin.
different energies around both of those thought processes as well. It's like feeling into where there's tension in the body, where they're really going with their mind, everything like that, and how it impacts them.
Absolutely. Emotionally unstable, so could swing off the handle very quickly. This might relate more to on the extreme end, things like borderline, as opposed to narcissistic personality disorder. Bullying. Now, again, I know with a lot of these things I'm saying, it's also going to relate to early childhood trauma and other stuff, but I'm saying that, or it could even be genetic factors, but I'm saying that whatever the tendency there is for that behavior because of other stuff in the past and genetics, serotonin will increase the chance of it actually happening right now in the person's behavior. That's what I'm positing. I'm not saying that excess serotonin will turn an otherwise emotionally and psychologically healthy people into a psychopath or a borderline or anything, but I'm saying it's going to exacerbate those tendencies and maybe make someone who's otherwise healthy have a bit of those tendencies if it's very excessive. Reduced verbal fluency, so again, kind of antagonistic to dopamine, less able to focus, less able to think clearly. Fearful, a sense of futility, suicidal, mood swings, so bipolar, easily agitated, I said psychopathic already, and then learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is one of the phrases I see battered around a lot in the Ray Peat community of people who, that tends to be one of their kind of focuses, is reducing serotonin. And so what is learned helplessness? Learned helplessness is, so there's lots of animal experiments around this. An example you probably heard of, Chrissy, is like the elephant, the baby elephant that is just tied to a pole on the ground, and they're desperate to get away, and they can't, and they pull, and it doesn't, and then by the time the elephant isn't an adult animal, it's huge. It could easily uproot that pole and go off wherever it wants, but it's learned that it can't, and so it doesn't even try, even though actually it could. So there's a lot of that, and there's subtle forms of that, right? There's just like passively accepting this is the way things are. There's a comedy show I listen to where they talk about this a lot, and they suddenly realized, oh, I could just change this. Like they're talking about like a couple who, because they were poor for years, they had to share a phone charger, and so they would often argue about, no, it's my turn, and then like eventually they were like, wait a minute, we're successful now. I could just buy another phone charger, right? We don't have to share one. We don't have to have these endless arguments. But I know it's a silly example, but it's that thing of like just passively accepting this is the way it is and there's nothing I can do to change it, versus, oh, I could just do this. I could make it the way that I want it. I don't have to be full of annoyance and resentment and futility about the situation. I could just change it. And I would say this is epidemic in our culture, right? One of my early business teachers, he said he would often make fun of how, he lived in some sunny climate, and people would say to him all the time, oh, you're so lucky being able to live there. And he goes, do they realize there are roads out of this city they live in? Like, they could just leave if they don't like it there. Right. Now, again, I know easier said than done. I know sometimes there's reasons, there's, a job that you can't leave, there's family you can't leave, whatever. I'm not minimizing everyone's struggles, but what I'm saying, a lot of the time, there's a lot more that you could do than occurs to you emotionally. Like emotionally, it feels like there's nothing I can do. And this is where we go into depression, futility, despair, suicidal, even all of this stuff. And I had it when I was ill a couple of years ago. I just was in despair sometimes. And it was such a weird thing to me because it's not my usual operating system. And so, and now I think I understand it's an excess of serotonin. So going back to your original question, Chrissy, if I try and reconcile those two things, so as you saw in that big list, some of the traits that I shared there, some of the issues, whatever you want to call it, were like very low status traits. But some of the traits I just shared, like bullying and being highly aggressive and thinking the whole world revolves around you and insisting everyone else conforms to that and all the rest of it, even rigid thinking, my way or the highway. Those are generally traits that are associated with high status people, right? The people in charge, the leaders and all the rest. And the cynics among us would go, most of the leaders are psychopaths, most of the politicians and business leaders. Certainly, statistically, it's true that psychopaths are much higher represented in leadership fields than the general population. If we were to extend, I don't think the study has not been done because it's harder to diagnose and it's so ubiquitous. But I think if you were to look at how many people that might qualify for narcissistic personality disorder in positions of power, it would be a lot. And I think there's reasons for this. Like being in a position of power is not as fun as some people think it is. It's actually a real drag. It's it's very stressful. There's constant demands made upon you. You face constant criticism, constant threats to your position. I mean, the only reason you would really do it in a way is either because you have a deep sense of duty and responsibility to serve the group, or because you have a deep desire to dominate and be on top. Like, there's not really a third option that I see that would not. Some people stumble into it, but that would keep you there over a long period of time. It's the same with like I was never that successful with social media, and I knew it's because even though I was I had a tiny bit of a name within my niche at one point, and I could see the people I was competing with, many of them. they would just obsessively post about themselves. Like, they just loved attention. You know, and this is the thing about narcissistic personality disorder. You are a bottomless black hole for attention. And so, but that gives those people an advantage, right? Like, they're going to be way better at putting themselves out there in a way that's effective, because whereas I go, oh, you know, do I really want to face this criticism, or do I really want to face this, you know, do I have the energy to be doing yet another post, yet another video, yet another photo? Like, the people who have the energy for it is the people to whom attention is like food, right? Like, they can't, and they have a vociferous appetite, right? They just can't get enough of it. So there's kind of like, with a few exceptions, maybe, a lot of the mental illnesses have some benefits. I mean, even, you know, schizophrenia, I was thinking, is an exception, but some of the greatest geniuses that have ever lived have had schizophrenic tendencies, right? Schizophrenia is being able to see connections between things that no one else sees. Some of the greatest geniuses have, you know, have had that capacity. Some of the greatest artists, I think, might have been diagnosed as schizophrenic. So anyway, there are benefits and drawbacks to everything. But if we're talking about health, if we're talking about happiness, I don't think that I'm getting to the point of not believing that high serotonin is the way to go. Now let's talk about, let me answer the status thing, then we'll go to the mainstream perspective. So, in fact, I want to talk about the mainstream before I answer the status thing, because I want to do all the facts before I get to the theorizing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, what about antidepressants? What about SSRIs, right? And so it's funny, like, if I recorded this video 5 years ago, it'd be a lot more controversial, I feel like. But it's becoming I see mainstream articles now that say, actually, maybe SSRIs aren't that great, and actually, maybe increased low serotonin is not the cause of depression, and actually, maybe increasing serotonin doesn't really help, and actually, maybe it makes no difference whatsoever. Like, so, however, that doesn't, obviously, this is a huge industry, and that doesn't correspond to everyone's lived experience. So I want to address why some people absolutely do feel better in SSRIs, right? If what I'm saying is true. It doesn't make any sense, right? So let me reconcile that. So a lot of SSRIs, they do raise serotonin levels in the blood, but a lot of them actually block various different serotonin receptors, especially the receptors which are the most troublesome. So basically, one of the big, let me zoom out a bit and talk about receptors. One of the big challenges with all of this, whether we're talking about dopamine, GABA, serotonin, or any of the other neurochemicals, the ones that change how we feel, is that because the way we test is testing blood, because it's easy to remove blood from the body and look at it, we tend to focus on what's in the blood. But the truth is, what's in your blood would be irrelevant if it weren't for the receptors. So if you think about it, all of it, also the hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, you could think of them all like currency. Like, this one is to do this effect, this one is to do this effect. But the receptors are like where you spend the currency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so essentially it's like going to, you know, I'm either going to go to Sainsbury's, or I'm going to go to Tesco's, or I'm going to go to Ralph's, or, you know, bringing it over stateside. So, you know, the receptor would be, where you're going to take that currency and where you're going to make the exchange for whatever it's going to give you.
Yes, exactly. And so imagine, this probably happens less and less, but have you ever been like in a town at night, and it's a small town, and you realize actually everything's closed and you can't spend it anywhere, right? Or the only place is maybe like a gas station or the 7-Eleven or something, and your choice is very limited, right? So that situation actually does happen with the neurochemicals and the receptors. Like, the receptors can all be blocked, they can be taken up, they can have reduced sensitivity, and so the amount that you have circulating in your blood isn't as important as most people think. In the same sense, and again, this is hard to imagine this like online world, but it wasn't that long ago you could be walking around with thousands of dollars in your pocket and nowhere to spend it, in your average town, right? Beyond a certain point at night. Or even, so there was no Amazon next day delivery. There wasn't any of that, right? So that's kind of what it's like with this stuff. So this is why I think this is one of the things that happened with me. My testosterone was so high, it was above the reference range, but I wasn't showing super high testosterone signs. We talked about that in the previous episode, but one of the things that has to do with is the receptors, right? So it's like, is that testosterone actually being spent? So going back to the serotonin, serotonin has a bunch of different receptors, I believe 5, although it's been a couple of months since I researched all this, and different receptors do different jobs. So it's not as simple as dopamine makes you feel this, serotonin makes you feel this. It's like if dopamine hits this receptor, it has more of this action. If it hits this receptor, it has more of this action. And so in the case of serotonin, there are some receptors that create more of some of the feelings that I talked about earlier and some receptors that create more others. Now, I have not seen the research that says like the high status effects are from one receptor and the low status effects are from another. And probably because it's probably more complicated than that. But I do, there are certainly some things that come from, some signs that come from specific receptors. So most of the SSRIs also block one or more of the serotonin receptors. And so there's an argument to be made that when people feel better on SSRIs, it's not because they're raising their blood serotonin, it's because they're actually reducing the ability of serotonin getting to the receptors, ironically. So that's why some people feel better. Now, you're still going to increase the circulating serotonin, and you still get, some of the receptors are still going to be able to take in more serotonin. And I think this is where people get such mixed results, right? Some people feel worse. There's serious side effects, including some of the ones I just listed, right? Suicide, probably being the most serious of all. So, usually when you talk to people on SSRIs who are happy with it, they'll say, I like it, I feel better overall, but I feel a bit emotionally blunted. Like I don't have the extreme highs or lows that I did before. So a little bit of a fog in terms of how they feel is probably like a best case scenario. Now, of course, someone who was feeling extremely bad before, that is an upgrade, that is an improvement, and that's fair enough. Another thing that I noticed is that, and I had to really dig deep for this one, some of the SSRIs, through the action that they take, actually increase. Guess if you can, see if you can guess what they increase.
I'm going to get it wrong.
Allopregnanolone.
Oh, okay. All right.
Allopregnanolone, the very things that we've been talking about.
Right.
So the people who do feel calmer, more relaxed, like genuinely, maybe it's because it's increasing that, right? So we don't know. And this is, I think I started the previous episode with this. It's amazing how much we actually don't know about human biochemistry.
It's very true.
How much is just a guess, how much is, like best fit. And that's fine because there's no reason science should know all the answers. The problem is then when the people with maybe high serotonin get in there with their rigid dogmatic thinking and their arrogance and I already know everything and say, no, this is the way it is, and anything else is misinformation, right? That's the problem. And, we've seen that over the last few years. I'm not going to comment on it because I'm going to get in trouble, but
yeah, I mean, most things we are looking at, and this is one of the things too, it's like, it's a working theory. We don't really fully know yet or understand we are working towards that, but it's not absolute.
And nor does mainstream medicine. And this is, I love the scientific method. I think when it's honestly and rigorously applied, it is fantastic. But one of the challenges with it is that you always have to isolate all the other variables to do a fair test. And so the thing about that is it leads to a lot of circumstantial conclusions that I think everyone falls victims to, including me, including Ray Peat, because the big picture isn't clear. This is why I always try and see the big picture. But when you just look at the science, a lot of the times you can go, okay, so, right, when you take an SSRI, it blocks the reuptake of serotonin, increases serotonin. A lot of people feel better. They feel calmer. They feel less extreme emotionally. Serotonin must be calming. And now they're like, and serotonin makes you happy, right? And now I mean, you've started to have you're starting to experiment the allopregnanolone, Chris, and you're like, have you ever tried SSRI? Did you ever?
No.
No, okay. So you won't be able to compare the two. But, you know, again, this isn't settled. None of what I'm saying is settled, but I think it's an interesting experiment. So, right, let me finally answer your question. Now I've addressed that. Unless you have any more science-based questions I can answer before I start speculating.
Well, yeah, but I don't want it to detract and maybe it's not the place to address it. But one of my questions would be is serotonin, how is it direct or indirectly related, or does it, like, if serotonin goes up, does dopamine go down, or are there many different facets, avenues, or also are there spaces where serotonin is required, like you just mentioned, serotonin can be a part of the process for allopregnanolone. So it's like, are there other instances around that, which is hence why that big plethora of signs, symptoms that can range from this side to this side, it's not just one clear channel.
So that's a good question. Let me just clarify. I think I might not have said it clearly based on what you said. So I wasn't saying that raising serotonin in the blood increases LOP. What I was saying is blocking those
right.
serotonin receptors would increase the allopregnanolone.
Thank you for the clarification.
But yeah, so, well, again, it's a great question. It's one of the things that I have really been pondering and studying. I don't think the answer to that is certain, but I'll answer what Ray Peat's hypothesis is, as that's what we're currently playing with. That basically there are stress chemicals and there are not stress chemicals. And so what you want to do is raise the not stress ones and reduce the stress ones. It's as simple as that. Now, the primary mechanism that I've got my own version of this that I'll do at the end of the recording, but I'll do Ray Peat's now. So the primary mechanism that you do for that is very similar to mine. Is first of all, you have to increase ATP. You have to increase cellular energy. You have to increase metabolism. As I've talked about in other episodes before, this is because if you do not have enough energy, raw energy being made by the cells, then you have to go to your backup stress systems in order to get enough energy. So that has to be the first thing always that you deal with and address. And that's what I talked about. That's all I talked about 2 episodes ago. That was kind of really the first part of this series. That is the most important thing to address. Now, secondarily, the other good guys, from Ray Peat's perspective, are dopamine. That's the only good stress chemical. And it's stress in the sense of energizing, motivating, making you want to do something, right? Gives you mental clarity, it gives you joy, gives you passion, gives you motivation. Dopamine feels great. It has to be balanced, though. So then there's also GABA. GABA calms everything down. I've always, even back when I thought serotonin was something different, always said the distinction is that GABA is like your peaceful Zen monk kind of feeling, right? It's that everything's okay. It's lowering inhibitions, and it's lowering the superego, the shoulds, I must, I mustn't, this isn't right, and you're just like, everything's okay. Like, everything's good with the world. It's. I was thinking about, the Serenity Prayer that alcoholics use. I love that. So, Lord, grant me the wisdom grant me the courage to change the things that I can, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. I really relate those. It's a very beautiful prayer. I think it's profound. I think there's no situation in life it is not beneficial for. I love it. The tricky thing, of course, is the third bit, is the wisdom to know the difference. People like me tend to overestimate what I can change. A lot of people do the opposite, right? The learned helplessness thing. They underestimate how much they can change. But either way, I would relate the dopamine part, as much as it is biochemical and not something else, not, psychological or spiritual, I would relate it to dopamine, that courage to see what you can change. And I would relate the serenity to accept that you cannot change to GABA. And so that's why, again, I feel like the balance of those two is really profound. And of course, we want to have a decent amounts of both. So the other things that I think that's it in terms of Peat's non-stress good neurochemicals, but he also values certain hormones very highly. Pregnenolone, which is different from allopregnanolone that we talked about before. I'll talk about those in a bit. I want to get into those. But pregnenolone and DHEA, which are kind of at the beginning of the chain of steroid hormones, he values highly as anti-stress chemicals. I think he's correct. And progesterone, he really values highly for both men and women for its profound anti-stress effects. Testosterone, I've had a little bit of, not quite clear on his position on that, but generally most people who follow him are big fans of testosterone as well. For the reason we talked about in the last episode, that it's beneficial. I actually think DHT is more beneficial, which again we talked about in the last episode. And then the bad ones is loads, right? So then we've got obviously cortisol, he thinks is bad, norepinephrine, epinephrine. And again, bad meaning everything has its purpose, but it's like in an ideal world, you'd want to minimize those. In an ideal world, you want to increase all the ones I just said is good, right?
Yeah, everything has its use for the appropriate time. It's when it's being misappropriated or used when it's not really, shouldn't be, because it's time for something else. Then that's getting out of balance. It's getting out of harmony.
Absolutely, yeah. And so we talked about this before many times. All stress chemicals can be good acutely, short period of time. I think Peat actually doesn't quite agree with that. He's got like a different attitude, but I think that's what the science has really shown, especially in the last 10 years or so, that there's definite value in short-term acute high stress chemicals. It's the long-term chronic that's really the issue. I would say Peat's goal seems to me to go back to the Polyvagal theory, is just to stay in ventral vagal mode as much as you possibly can. And not even get into sympathetic, and certainly not get into dorsal. But I'll talk about that. I want to talk about that at the end of the recording, my views on that. So other bad things are, so the stress chemicals, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, serotonin, and then glutamate, which is the main excitatory neurochemical. And then in terms of hormones, estrogen being the really bad one, prolactin also being really bad, and maybe those are the main ones. Again, I didn't write any of this down off the top of my head. So the idea is to, not the idea is that with the modern world, the modern lifestyle, the modern diet, everything, we're going to have a tendency towards, and maybe even with genetics, we have a tendency towards the quote unquote bad ones to get too high. They're bad because they get too high, but they have a tendency to get too high, especially with time, right? So DHEA just goes downhill as people get older. Testosterone goes downhill as people get older. Progesterone goes downhill as people get older. Whereas estrogen tends to increase as people get older. Prolactin, a bit more, dependent, but overall tends to increase as people get older. So when we say, then TSH, that's a really bad, he called it a stress chemical. So TSH is the hormone that tells your thyroid to produce more thyroid hormone. His view is that it's aging. The other interesting thing, I've obviously read diversely, and it's interesting that in yoga, they have this, when I say yoga, I don't mean the stretching, I mean like the ancient, system going back thousands of years of spiritual connection and optimizing the health of the body. And, they claim that people who do the advanced practices live hundreds of years and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? But it's interesting that they have this idea that there's this place in the center of the head around the third eye chakra, I think it's called Bindu sometimes, that produces this nectar and this poison. And then the idea is that then goes down into the body. And then if the throat chakra, the Vishuddhi, which I think translates as filter, if that is working well, it kind of purifies the poison, all you're left with is nectar. And if you manage that, then that's when you can have eternal life and spiritual connection, all the rest of it. So this is one of the big goals of like really advanced yoga. It's interesting to me the correlation between that and what Ray Peat says, which is that the chemicals created in the the pituitary are generally aging. They accelerate aging, whereas the thyroid hormone is generally anti-aging. It reduces aging. And so I wonder if the yoga thing is actually kind of more like a metaphor, but it does point to the precise areas of the body, right? So this area of the body is producing lots of chemicals that will age you if they're in excess. And this part of the body is that you want to encourage to produce as much of its chemicals as possible to counterbalance the aging effect of these ones. I thought that's kind of quite interesting, that correlation. Maybe I'm being a bit schizoid and seeing connections that aren't there, but you know.
Exactly. So as we're and that's a really great distinction of understanding too. It's like the roles of these two very important glands that are in our system that are regulators.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and the pituitary is, the ultimate regulator of the hypothalamus, pituitary are the ultimate regulators of the whole body. So it's weird. I said he's an iconoclast. Look, it looks at things from a different direction. It's weird to see it as the thing that poisons you and kills you. But this is not just him. There is this idea because going back to eunuchs, people who are castrated before they go into puberty, and they do not show a lot of the signs of aging that other people do. And so, there's a lot of speculation as to why that is. And initially testosterone was actually blamed for that. But, there are theories that perhaps it's because if the person never goes through puberty, they don't go through all those changes that then cause the pituitary to make a lot more of these hormones, which then perhaps accelerate the aging process. So, as I said, while I'm in the realm of speculation, let me now speculate finally about serotonin status. So, I feel like the whole idea that serotonin is so again, from the Ray Peat world perspective, the only real benefit of serotonin is that it's a thing that promotes peristalsis. Oh God, we haven't got into this as well. So here's another interesting thing about serotonin, and this is often said as like a woo way, but it's something actually interesting to ponder. So, about 95% of serotonin is created in the gut. Now, as it's currently understood, that serotonin doesn't penetrate the blood-brain barrier, so it doesn't technically act as a neurotransmitter, it doesn't technically get into the brain. But it's still interesting that the vast majority of it is created in the gut, and it's created by bacteria. Now, when you do like a test, like I recommend a biome site test. I think I recommended them in the digesting episode, just in terms of like really good information at a very low price, very accurate, very good. Among all the other stuff they tell you, okay, based on the bacteria we're seeing in your microbiome, we expect you're going to have this level of dopamine, this level of GABA, this level of serotonin, this level of noradrenaline, this level of histamine. I think those are the 5 that they give you. And so in my case, last time I did it was a while ago, I had more like not great bacteria. And because I had the not great bacteria, the serotonin was really high and the histamine was high. Oh, acetylcholine, I think that's the other one. So yeah, a bunch of different things. We haven't talked much about acetylcholine because it's not really a feel-good chemical. It's more cognition, but it's another one that I believe Peat is against. I'm not clear on that one yet. But anyway, and when you look at that, it corresponded quite well with my experience at the time with this new understanding of how these different things make you feel. So the interesting thing is, a lot of people actually do have gut dysbiosis. This is one of the things that is coming up in the alternative health community, like to go actually, and again, this is an area that's really new. It's hard to draw conclusions yet, and I think even the mainstream medical establishment acknowledges this, that we don't know yet for sure what is good, what is bad. But it's interesting to speculate that if the vast majority of it is created in the gut and the vast majority is created by organisms that maybe ideally weren't there, then like maybe if those organisms were a lot less and they were under control, we'd have a lot less of these neurotransmitters, these stress neurotransmitters being created, and we would feel a lot better. So again, that kind of the fact that the vast majority of it is created in the gut by organisms that we could do without tells me that it's not as essential as people think it is. Does that make sense as a speculation?
We're going to take a quick break to share with you one of our amazing sponsors, Genetic Insights. What makes Genetic Insights uniquely valuable is that they test over 83 million different variants, which guarantees a 99.7% accuracy on all of their DNA reports. With over 100 reports available, you get comprehensive insights into what your DNA is telling you about how to optimize your health today and in the future. I found reviewing my results to be incredibly accurate and applying some of the recommendations, which are personalized to your individual DNA, to be extremely helpful for me and my family. I also loved how easy it was to upload my raw DNA data that I already had from previously using Ancestry.com, because Genetic Insights supports uploading raw data from all major platforms. To get your health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and get 20% off today by using coupon code Rejuvenate. Remember that supporting our sponsors supports our podcast, which allows us to keep sharing this important information with you free of cost. So, go get your Genetic Insights health reports by going to geneticinsights.co and use coupon code Rejuvenate for 20% off today. A little bit, yeah. I mean, if you could clarify, a little bit deeper in there, because it's like my understanding too is that the foods that we eat is what attracts the bacteria that we have in our gut. So
absolutely,
is it basically bound by, okay, if we're not making such good food choices and the bacteria that are in us, the majority of them are most likely going to be creating serotonin
and other neurotransmitters that we might be better having less of. Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If we're making bad food choices, or if we've got some kind of overgrowth, right? By which point, even if you make good food choices, you can still struggle, as many of the people in the health world that I've known have experienced, including myself. But basically, if you make bad food choices, at least at some point, you got a bad combination in there. Absolutely right. Then they're creating a lot of these things that are making you feel a certain way. And so, in the alternative health world, these things are sometimes blamed on like parasites that make you feel a certain way, or candida and stuff that makes you feel a certain way. But it's interesting to see that there's some definite truth to at least the idea that bacteria is going to make you feel a certain way. So if you eat a certain diet, then the bacteria that are already in there are going to change in composition, as you said, and they're going to release a certain level of neurotransmitters. So the correlation between what we eat and how we feel is huge, right? And it's huge through that mechanism, like directly. I mean, it's obviously huge through the indirect mechanism that this does this and this whole chain of side effects, but just literally, you eat this meal, you feed this bacteria, they create more of this thing that makes you feel stuff. Neurotransmitter. Like, it's actually that direct to the impact as well. And so, as I said, the fact that it looks like not great bacteria are one of the types that really produces a lot of serotonin makes me think, that's suspicious that serotonin is actually a great thing, if that's the case. Does that make sense? Yeah,
because then essentially, too, it's like, well, if serotonin is potentially a stress chemical, then that would be a potential signal for your body to go, hey, you're under stress because you've got something in here that's really not quite working out for you so well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yes, but that's like a best case scenario view of it. Another way of viewing it would be that these organisms actually have an agenda of their own. Like we certainly see this in nature in non-humans, right? Like the parasite will go in, it will take over the organism, and it will like the worm that's taken over by the parasite, and then it goes off. I can't remember if it's a worm, some kind of insect, and then it goes off and puts itself where a bird can eat it. So the parasite is then transferred to the bird. There's a great book about this called Parasite Rex. There's loads and loads of examples in nature where these organisms go in and alter the behavior of their host to suit their purposes. And so it making you more highly serotonized is maybe not a good thing. It may not be for your best interest at all. It may be in the best interest of the organism in some way.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've been watching The Last of Us is the new thing that's out. Yeah, kind of like that.
I've not. I vaguely heard of it, but from what I heard, exactly like that. Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that idea, as I said, in nature, in the animal world, that's an absolute fact that organisms literally go in and zombify different animals. So yeah, it's not that much of a stretch. So back to speculation, and I want to get to the other thing. In terms of status, I would say my view on it is, okay, so serotonin can make you feel high status, it can make you dominant and domineering, it can make you feel low status, it can make you feel helpless and passive, and all the other stuff I said. But what if having high serotonin in general makes you generally more aware of and in tune with the tribal dynamics? What if it increases that tribal awareness? What if it increases your tendency to compare yourself to the others around you and think to yourself, am I above them or am I below them? And then if you're above, you feel stronger, but also maybe more bullying, more narcissistic or whatever. If you're below, you feel, inferior, more helpless, more futile, more depressed, and all the rest of it. Now, if we go to pretty much every great spiritual teacher and ask them what is the key to happiness, one of the things that they'll say is stop comparing yourself to other people, right? They're doing what they're doing, you're doing what you're doing. Even a lot of religions talk about this as well, right? Just you focus on your relationship with God, leave everyone else to it, right? That's the religious version. So what if in animals that are in that kind of tribal setting, high levels of serotonin is actually valuable for the animals? Because again, most mammals say, are in a constant struggle to survive. There's very scarce resources, there's not enough food and all the rest of it. So yes, serotonin is a stress chemical, but it's the thing that helps you navigate your position in a group. Because an animal who has low level of pecking order awareness is going to get pecked, They're either not going to take enough resources because they don't realize that they could, or they're going to take too many and they're going to get beaten down by someone who's like, who do you think you are, right? So throughout most of the animal world, possibly that stress awareness of where am I in the pecking order? Am I above this person? Is actually good. But from a human being's point of view, we actually have the choice to transcend that to some degree. And we can go, you know what? I don't need to compare myself to other people. I can just be me. I can do what all the spiritual teachers said. I think Sadhguru, I've mentioned him a few times. He says, you should not consider yourself superior to anyone and anything, and you should not consider yourself inferior to anyone and anything. So even if I was correct with my old interpretation of serotonin, right, is it possible to have that level of spiritual awareness where you don't feel superior or inferior to anyone or anything if you have high serotonin? I don't think so. Is it possible to feel that you are not superior or inferior to anything if you have high level of dopamine, so you're just getting on with your thing, and you have high levels of GABA, so you just feel at peace and you accept everything as it is right now in the present? I would say yes. So I actually think that the combination of everything we're talking about, high levels of energy, mitochondrial energy, what would be called chi or prana in the old systems, plus high levels of dopamine, which we could call yang, plus high levels of GABA, which we could call yin, together allow a person, in one of the Taoist systems I used to study, they talked about how you should take your awareness and make it like up, down. So you, heaven, earth, that should be the focus, right? And they would say that the point of being alive, the point of being a human, is to be a conduit, a connection between the heaven and earth. And one of the ways that we go wrong is we break that, and this is why a lot of Taoist stuff is about being a tree, like being like a tree, right? Connecting heaven and earth, standing still like a tree, like feeling like a tree. And the way we get that wrong is by creating a lateral focus, where we start connecting more with others around us and comparing and contrasting ourselves with them. And that's where the whole Buddhist idea comes from, that all life is suffering, because, constantly comparing. Even if you're the problem with serotonin awareness is, even if you're the top of the chain, right? You're the top dog, absolutely. You're the uncontested ruling emperor of everything you survey. You're still not happy. You're still going to be afraid someone's going to take it from you. You're paranoid. You're suspicious. Even if no one wants to betray you because you're very popular, you're still but do they really like me, or do they only like me because of my position? You know, it's not a happy life either, right? So in the world of status, and of course I don't have to tell you about why it's not good to be at the bottom of the pile. So in the world of status, no one's really happy. The only ones that are happy are the people who separate themselves from the status game and go, you know, to various degrees, right? Maybe it's the hermit living on the mountain, but maybe it's just, you know, the person just functioning in normal society, but they just don't take it too seriously, right? They focus more, and this is again whether, you know, the religious person and or the spiritual person, different words, kind of same thing in essence. They're more concerned with their relationship with God. They're more concerned with their relationship with their inner self. They're more concerned with the relationship with the nature around them. So that's heaven and earth, and less concerned with, you know, playing the status games. And
it's because that status as well, to me, you know, hearing that, it's a constant state of evaluation. You're constantly on alert. You're always having to check, who's this, who's that, where are they, what's this? So there's never, so it sounds like, yeah, that constant state of agitation.
Yes.
So with all of that said, Elwin, how can we reduce serotonin if that is something that we need to do?
Yeah, good question. So again, if you do it totally on your own reconnaissance, right? I'm not recommending it. I don't even know for sure if it's a good idea yet, but if you would like to try it for yourself, like I've been doing, here's what I've been doing. So first of all, you do not take serotonin precursors intentionally. So don't take L-tryptophan, don't take 5-HTP. Sounds pretty obvious. Don't take things that contain them. Yes, I know that I sell 5-HTP currently and feel younger. Maybe I won't by the time you see this. I might even sell something that contains it, so be aware of that. If you want to do this experiment, don't buy that off me or anyone else. Now, second of all, obviously, in terms of precursors, it's also in foods, right? So some foods are higher tryptophan than others. We talked about this before in the previous episode when we talked about dopamine, but there's another layer to it that I'll add now. So I said, if you want to raise your dopamine, one of the things you can do is increase the tyrosine by adding a little bit or phenylalanine to each meal, because then the ratio of tyrosine in comparison to other amino acids will increase, meaning you're giving more of a dopamine precursor than other things, which will raise the level of dopamine compared to other things. Now, the corollary of that, if you want to reduce serotonin, is you reduce tryptophan, and even more important than to add a dopamine precursor. And you can also, if you want, add other amino acids, like maybe branched chain amino acids a lot of people use, or you can use an essential amino acid formula, for instance, but without L-tryptophan, or sometimes with extremely low L-tryptophan. So if you take basically other amino acids other than L-tryptophan with your meal, then the ratio of L-tryptophan to the other amino acids will be lower. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And so less of the serotonin will be made that will be stimulated. Now, ideally, you actually eat lower tryptophan food. So you can mess with the ratio in the way that I'm saying, but ideally, for this experiment, you also don't have the high tryptophan foods. And this is one of the things, again, that Peat recommends. He recommends avoiding high tryptophan food as well as high methionine food, because both have been shown. It's been shown that reducing those in the diet actually extends lifespan, at least in the rodent model. So that's where he's basing that off. It's never been done with humans, of course, because we live such a long time. It'd be very hard to construct an experiment of someone having no L-tryptophan their whole life. But anyway, it's still speculation. But so some of the highest tryptophan foods are like poultry. Actually can't remember all of them off the top of my head. You have to look at a food table, but you basically, it's basically kind of more muscle meat is one of them, especially poultry. And so, for instance, he talks about how throughout history, people have tended to have a fairly balanced amount of muscle meat versus connective tissue meat. So they would tend to have stews with the whole animal. In a lot of parts of the world, they still do that, right? And then the connective tissue protein has very low levels of tryptophan, and it has really high levels of glycine, which is a calming neurotransmitter in its own right, and it's a building block of GABA. So if you do eat meat, Say if you do want to have chicken still, that's fine. Make sure to have more of the chicken broth and less of the chicken muscle, because the chicken broth will be low tryptophan and high glycine, which increases the GABA, which, if serotonin is a stress chemical, it will counteract it. So do you see what I mean? If you just want to do the supplement version of it, then adding L-tyrosine to the meal, adding glycine to the meal, adding maybe the branched chain amino acids to the meal if you want to be more anabolic, if you want to put on muscle. All of those will like dilute and limit and minimize the tryptophan. And then reducing the tryptophan foods as well as much as you can, which I believe is dairy and poultry. I think that's the main things off the top of my head. I haven't looked it up for a while. Now, the other thing, other than not giving your body the building blocks and reducing the building blocks and minimizing the building blocks and the ratio of building blocks and all the rest of it, is don't take things which raise serotonin, and do take things that block the serotonin receptors, like we talked about. SSRIs do that partially, in order to keep the serotonin low. Generally, I have not been bothering with this. I have simply, reduced my intake of the building block of it. But I certainly have been, I've not been taking things that lower it. I tried a couple, didn't really feel like it was doing very much, so I discontinued. But I have definitely been avoiding the things that raise serotonin. So first of all, just go back to hormones, as that's what we've mainly been talking about throughout the last few episodes. So some of the hormones are antithetical to serotonin. You asked this earlier. So yes, although some substances raise dopamine and serotonin, definitely, overall dopamine is antagonistic to serotonin. So by increasing your dopamine, you're going to lower your serotonin. By increasing your testosterone, you're also going to lower your serotonin. And by increasing your progesterone, you're going to lower your serotonin. So all of these things, as well as being highly beneficial in all kinds of other ways, like we've talked about, are also beneficial for these reasons. And then avoiding cortisol, avoiding things that raise cortisol, avoiding things that raise estrogen, avoiding things that raise prolactin, because all of those go along with serotonin, increase serotonin. So that's kind of along the liver route. Oh, and also thyroid, increasing thyroxine, increasing T3, also low serotonin. So that's the other interesting thing. All the other stuff that we know is good for us will actually like lower serotonin. So that's an interesting, observation. Polyunsaturated fats, especially omega-6s, and anything else that increases inflammation, lowers serotonin. Salt lowers serotonin by binding to it in the gut. Lithium, which I recommended a few episodes ago, in very small amounts, not in drug-like amounts, also binds to serotonin and lowers serotonin. So it's speculated that might be one of the reasons why high lithium in the water is correlated with lower rates of suicide and violent crime, because it lowers serotonin. It could actually be as simple as that. Despite what I said, obviously protein contains tryptophan, but low protein diets will tend to elevate the level of serotonin. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough protein. And then, so we talked about DHT. I said testosterone already, but yeah, DHT is another one. And then in terms of substances, so it's a lot of the stuff that I've talked about before. I'm just looking at my list here. So theanine, we talked about before, that lowers serotonin. Glycine, we talked about before, that lowers serotonin. Magnesium, methylene blue. Now, methylene blue, you've got to be careful with. If you have too much of it, maybe more than 10 milligrams a day, 15 milligrams a day, then it starts to act a little bit like a SSRI, because it's an MAO inhibitor at that dosage, meaning it stops the breakdown of serotonin. But so long as you keep your methylene blue dose low, it actually is anti-serotonin. So that is really dose dependent. Making sure you have enough zinc. Making sure you have enough L-lysine, another amino acid that we talked about. So again, we can see actually a lot of the stuff that I was recommending and doing even before I started discovering all this about serotonin are actually also helpful for lowering serotonin. Ginger's good for that specific purpose. let's see, vitamin B1. You've heard me go on and on about the benefits of that. That's another thing that in high doses will lower serotonin. The other, vitamin B2, vitamin B3, vitamin D, even the bromantane that I talked about in the last episode in terms of primary benefit is increasing dopamine, but that also has an effect at reducing serotonin. L-arginine, I usually don't recommend that because it can feed herpes virus, but for those who need to lower blood pressure, L-arginine can be good, and so that is another side effect of L-arginine. Just going through the list, and yeah, basically anything that raises dopamine, that's kind of the commonality. And then some of the things that raise serotonin that I would personally avoid for this reason. St. John's wort is definitely one of them. Anything that says that it's an MAO inhibitor, I would be concerned about. Anything that's an SSRI, of course, if you're taking any of these under the supervision of a doctor, then you need to continue and work with your doctor to reduce them. Perhaps if you're taking an SSRI, you can suggest to your doctor, though you still want to take their advice, that you would prefer something that raises dopamine for your depression instead of an SSRI, and see if they are open to that, if that's a good idea for you.
Unless it's potentially working for them. I mean, because there are the cases where it's actually working. So, correct?
And that's why I say suggest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You could still go, I'm feeling pretty good with this, but...
could I be feeling better?
Could I be feeling better with this one instead?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to recommend it even, but you can just Google what drugs do doctors give for depression that are based on dopamine rather than serotonin. Just, it's true that a doctor will say if you're doing great, then why mess with it? But if you're feeling great all the time, you're probably not watching this video. So I'm more recommending it for those that are struggling. The supplement SAMI, which is recommended sometimes to support the liver and stuff like that, will absolutely increase serotonin. So I would not do that if I was doing an experiment to lower my serotonin. The herb rhodiola, I would not use. Saffron, I think, is a complicated one. I think it like with some of the other stuff we talked about, it blocks the system, it blocks some of the serotonin receptors, and it also increases dopamine. So I'm not against saffron. I actually quite like it. We sell it on the site, but still, if I were doing an experiment to lower serotonin, I wouldn't do it during that experiment. And valerian, let's see what else. St. John's wort, did I already say that? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, so, a few of those things. I wouldn't be that worried about any of those unless they are things that you're specifically taking to raise serotonin. My main thing would be to do all the other stuff we talked about. Reduce the building blocks, and increase the dopamine in the GABA.
Throw this one other thing into, because we did have a discussion in one of the other episodes talking about, the spiritual suffering. I think we were discussing that, and that is to get rid of all desire, and dopamine is desire. So can you kind of talk me through this theory on this, because where you've come from before to now with with where we are now here. So yeah, you can enlighten me.
It's a very good question. Well, I will try. And if I do, it will be, again, I think Sadhguru really helped me reconcile this and work this through, doing his course, which, am I allowed to share? It's called Inner Engineering. I'm not going to share, the secrets of blah,
they
blah,
can
blah.
go and look it up. They can, hey, if you're interested,
we'll link to it.
Put a link.
But this is just the conclusion I came to it. I'm not saying this is his words. This is what I took from it, or one of the things. So he talks about the issue of desire a lot in there. And the thing that he says is that how we deal with desire is really key to our happiness and our spiritual progress. And so the general consensus on what you do to it, he said is inaccurate because, so there's this idea that desire is the root cause of suffering, right? This Buddhist idea, and that's what you were talking about. But what do you do about it? And he said, that's not wrong, like comparing yourself to others is also the root of suffering. We've already addressed that. But of course, wanting things and not having them is still a source of suffering, right? Absolutely. And not wanting things and having them is a source of suffering. But we can look at that as all being desire, right? Because it's like, I desire to not have this be the way it is, or I desire to have that, right? So either way, it's all desire. And so a lot of people teach kind of detachment from desire. But the only challenge with detachment from desire, as he points out, is that desire is life force itself, right? Like the basic will to live, as people like Nietzsche talked about, is connected with the life force. And so the more you suppress desire, or the more you try and separate and dissociate yourself from desire or attachment to outcomes, the more you also attach yourself from your own life force. And this is why people who often espouse that philosophy do not seem very vigorous, dynamic, passionate, full of life, because they are disconnecting from that life force. However, if you do the opposite, if you embrace that life force, you're going to be full of strong passions, full of strong opinions, full of desires, wants, frustrations because you're not getting it, all of the rest of it. So how do you reconcile it? And the solution that he gave, and again, I don't want to take away from, he'll say it better than me, but just to answer your question, is what you need to learn to do is want the present moment. Want what's in front of you right now. So it's kind of back to the serenity prayer thing. It's like, I want things as they are right now, and yet I also want to create this future. That's the reconciliation, right? If you can manage that, there is never a time where desire causes suffering. And if you think about it, most of the time the suffering will not come from the desire. It will come with the comparison to others, right? Because you'd be like, well, it wasn't, the other person's already got it. They didn't have to wait. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to suffer. They didn't, like, that's where the suffering comes from. If you were like the only person on the planet and you had a desire, you were hungry, you were cold, all the basic stuff, or maybe a bigger desire. You wanted to build a big, monument to God or whatever it may be. The frustration, the suffering would be minimal because you wouldn't have anything to compare it to. Because you'd be like, well, this is just the way it is. This is how long things take. This is the level of difficulty that's normal. This is the level of struggle that's normal, right? It's like the suffering only comes from the lack of acceptance, not the feeling itself, Like, so pain still hurts, but it's the feeling that you shouldn't be in pain, the feeling that the pain's going on too long, the feeling that this person isn't in pain, why should I be in pain? This same action didn't cause pain for this person, but it did to me. That's not fair. All of that, that's what causes the vast majority of the suffering. So there's still a little bit of suffering in terms of the I want it and I don't have it yet, or I don't want it and it's still there. But the vast majority is from the comparison to others. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, you also help solidify too, because I know we both, love Joe Dispenza, and then there's also some other law of attraction teachers that I listen to, and when they talk about the desire or the things that you want, and part of the manifestation of it is, and I think you said this before, is like Dr. Joe will say, you act as if it's already with you. That's where that feeling comes. Or can you clarify that distinction? Because then we're not in. Yeah, we're not in the lack. We're not in the thing of like, oh, I don't have it. In that space, it's like we're feeling as if it's already occurred.
I think you're right, but the way you phrased it is something I see an issue that people often get into in that world, and it's the delusion, right? Yeah. And this goes all the way to extremely successful people who have this tendency towards delusion, right, and get castigated for it by some. So how can you, as you said, focus on what you want to manifest, if you want to use that word, and then have it happen with minimal friction, but without delusion? because the challenge with delusion, it makes you less effective at operating in the world right now. I think, there are a lot of people, Steve Jobs was one example of it. People said he had a reality distortion field. He could just convince you that something is possible, even if everything within you and everyone else said it wasn't, So he had a great ability to see the future and make it happen. But he was also a guy, from what I heard, with a lot of frustration, a lot of impatience, a lot of anger, and a lot of delusion about things, like not wanting to admit that his first daughter was actually his daughter and stuff like that, right? Because it didn't fit in with his worldview of how things should be. So yes, you can create amazing things and be an amazing person with an amazing impact in the world and still be in a place of delusion, but it also creates a lot of suffering within you to be in a place of delusion, because there's this constant clash between what I want to believe and what is actually true. And so I don't think it's the best way to operate. So my understanding is it's what I just said from Sadhguru, which is accept and appreciate how it is right now, and then, yes, have gratitude and appreciation for the fact that it's coming. But you don't have to delude yourself into believing that it's already the case. Does that make sense? So let's say you're really overweight.
Yeah, put your focus on where your gratitude is for the things that you have here in this present moment.
And what's coming.
Right.
So if you're really overweight, like persuading yourself you're already thin, I don't think it helps, because you constantly got the clash between what you want to believe and reality, right? The thin clothes still don't fit you. The scale still says this. People still treat you this way. Whatever it is that makes you want to lose weight, right? And so every delusion uses up a lot of energy to maintain, and it creates a lot of stress to the resisting reality. So I don't think that's the right way. I think that's where most people go wrong with the law of attraction and manifestation, all that stuff, is getting into delusion. I think it's especially a tendency for narcissistic people who are also very attracted to that kind of philosophy, because it's like, I can control everything. It's a very appealing belief to a narcissist. So, but if you say, everything the way it is right now is great. That's the way I want it to be. Not, again, delude yourself, like try and find the good in it, right? It's like, okay, I wish, it wasn't this cold right now. I wish I wasn't this hungry. I wish I had more money. But you know what? There's so many great things. I can be grateful for this, and this is actually pretty good, and this is much better than it was. And so, yeah, I like it the way it is right now. That's great. But what I want is this. And I'm so grateful that that's what's going to happen, that is on its way to me. And yeah, the whole thing about acting like it's already happened is like acting like you're sure it's going to happen. I think that's the crucial distinction. Not act like it's already happened, which I see a lot of people do, and then they're just in a state of delusion, constantly like battling reality. And now that's tricky. It's tricky to have like that. And this goes back to the religious point. Faith. That's what faith means, right? Faith that it's going to happen. It's that unwavering belief based not on facts and reality and evidence, but based on a belief or a vision, right? But it's very, very, very difficult to do it that way. It's much easier to get into a state of delusion, but it's also way more stressful and counterproductive to get into a state of delusion. So
beautiful. I know that was a little bit of a digression, but thank you so much. I know we want to kind of, maybe wrap this up, but spending time on hormones and optimization and going a little bit deeper dive into that. So I want to bring us back into that. So what was the connection that, I think you were talking about polyvagal theory, hormone optimization, things like that.
I think hormone optimization we might do another time, but I'll finish with the polyvagal theory. So again, if you haven't already seen the stress episode, that's really going to be required to understand this bit, but I think this is super important. So it's to understand what I want to try and explain, and this is my theory, haven't named it yet, the progression from feeling fantastic to feeling really bad and how to get back again using neurochemicals, using hormones and neurochemistry to actually understand it. So, as we talked about, I think this all makes sense now. I think I can do it quite quickly because we've already foreshadowed it a lot. So, in an ideal world, we're ventral vagal. We're motivated, we're present, we're clear, we're emotionally clear, we're passionate, we're full of life, right? So that means we have high dopamine. We're also able to accept things as they are. We're able to relax, we're able to have fun, we're able to enjoy the world of nature, sensory experience. So we're going to have high GABA. And we have plenty of energy for every system of our body to do what it needs to do. So we have high levels of ATP. We have high levels of cellular energy. We have reasonably low levels of everything else. And so in an ideal situation, we have periods of going into sympathetic because of, on purpose, ideally. We purposefully connect with cold water. We purposefully exert ourselves. We purposefully get out of our comfort zone and do something challenging. We purposefully do courage, like we talked about earlier. We do something courageous. And so the cortisol will go up for a little bit. The norepinephrine will go up for a little bit. If it's a very important event or it feels like a very important event, maybe the adrenaline will go up a bit. And then it will come right back down and we'll relax again. We'll have a great night's sleep and we'll wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. That's the ideal situation. Now, as we start to get stressed, as life becomes difficult, as we're struggling for whatever reason, it seems to me like the first thing to go is the GABA. So we're still full of motivation, we're still full of passion, but we're finding it difficult to relax. We're finding it difficult to get a good night's sleep. We're finding it difficult to just to accept and be present, be happy with things as they are. But we're still pretty good. From most people's perspective, they're going to be like, wow, Jeff, Jane, they're highly motivated. They're a real go-getter, right? So they're a little bit serious, a little bit, highly strong, but they're great, right? So at that point, we're still generally, a lot of people have a high opinion of us. And we might bat between ventral vagal and sympathetic. We're spending too much time in sympathetic. Maybe we're spending a lot of the day there, but we're also still able to relax to some degree, and we're okay. Then as it goes further, the next thing that goes is the ATP. We're spending too much time with everything out of balance. The thyroid is usually the weakest link. The thyroid starts to underproduce, as I won't describe that process again, talked about it in detail in the thyroid episode. And so now there's a lack of cellular energy. Now the problems really start because we can either accept that and then relax, but in this day and age, relax, rejuvenate, recuperate, spend a few weeks in bed, really, but most of us don't do that. So then, and what is this stress that's knocked us? It could just be a demanding life. It could be a trauma. It could be a tragedy. It could be an infection. It could be a toxic exposure. It could be a lack of, chronic lack of sleep. All of these things can all push us into this direction, this direction I'm talking about now. This is the bad direction I'm describing. And so we'll start running more and more cortisol and more norepinephrine. But we'll still have high dopamine. So we're still motivated. But now we're really highly strong. Now we really struggle to relax. Maybe we don't have enough sleep. We're abusing stimulants. We're going for it. Maybe it's because we have a high-powered job, but maybe it's just because we're the caretaker of everyone else, right? And we don't look after ourselves. We're looking after everyone else around us. It could be whatever, but that's the kind of situation we're in. Again, looking at that person, we're still looking at them and go, wow, so impressive, Jane or Jeff. They have so much energy. They still look okay, but they're starting to struggle. And if you test them, the DHEA is going to start to go down. And this is because, and this goes back to the hormone thing. So all of our steroid hormones, which is all the sex hormones and some of the stress hormones, are made out of ultimately the same thing, which is cholesterol. Now, cholesterol gets turned into something else called pregnenolone. And for various reasons, but from what I see, usually a lack of thyroid hormone is a culprit. Not enough pregnenolone is being made from cholesterol, which is why then cholesterol gets too high. One of the reasons, I'm going to talk about another reason why, but one of the reasons why cholesterol gets too high in the blood. And then you have a lack of pregnenolone. Not a serious lack, but not ideally as much as you have. Now, then this thing starts happening called the cortisol steal, which means again, this is simplifying a lot, but basically that pregnenolone can either go into DHEA and get turned into testosterone and estrogen and its metabolites, or it can go into cortisol, which is your stress chemical. If that person is in that state that I was previously describing, more and more of it's going to go into stress, and less of it's going to be available to go into DHEA. Less of it's going to be available to go into progesterone, which is going to impact women extremely negatively for reasons we talked about last time. And less of it is going to be able to go into testosterone, which is going to impact men extremely badly, as we talked about last time. Now, for whatever reason, the enzymes that kind of do the conversion still do push it towards estrogen. So men will tend to get high estrogen, low testosterone. Women will tend to get higher estrogen, lower progesterone. At this stage, eventually it all flatlines at the extreme, but for now. So for now, how is this person doing? They're going to have high cortisol, high epinephrine, high norepinephrine, high dopamine, and high levels of estrogen are going to be starting to build up. So the next thing to go is the dopamine. And now this person still has energy, they're still doing stuff, but life is no longer fun. Life is now a grind. So dopamine is kind of your move towards chemical, and the other ones, cortisol, norepinephrine, etc., are the move away from chemicals. So now it's no longer I want, it's just I have to. I need and I have to, right? You no longer do something because you want to, you do it because if you don't, this will happen, this will fall apart, the bills are not going to get paid, you'll be homeless, you'll be out of a job, you'll be whatever, right? It like all your motivation starts to become to avoid bad stuff happening to you. At this stage, you're going to still look like that highly energized person, but you're going to start to look stressed. You're going to start to look anxious. People are going to go, oh, you know, so no longer just highly strong, but actually like anxious. You're going to be engaging in addictive behaviors way more because your dopamine is now crashed. So you're going to try and raise your dopamine with all the addictive behaviors, whether it's, you know, actual dopamine drugs, your coffee, or your stimulants, your amphetamines, your Ritalin, your whatever, or you're going to be just doing high dopamine activities, all the addictions.
Can I ask you, is overeating, would that be things like that, binge eating, would that be associated with trying to raise your dopamine levels as well?
Yes, less so exclusively, because depending on what you're eating, it also raise other stuff. But absolutely, anything that you're doing in that addictive way that feels like a reward, something you're looking forward to, which absolutely that is the case for food, for people in that position, then yeah, absolutely, that is as well. Other thing, gambling addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, social media addiction, work addiction, workaholism, what else? All of that kind of stuff, right? Everything that temporarily, gaming addiction, everything that temporarily raises dopamine. So that's the state you're going to be in. You're going to be wired, you're going to have trouble getting to sleep at night, but you're still going to be able to wake up in the morning and function. Next, the cortisol starts to drop. Now you're going to have problems. Now you're not just going to feel stressed and anxious, you're going to start feeling overwhelmed. You're going to feel like you can't cope. You're still going to be able to get through, but it's going to be a real struggle. You're almost certainly going to be using stimulant drugs to get through the day. You're almost certainly going to be using downers to calm you down at night, you know, whether it's alcohol, cannabis, whatever. You're still going to be able to function, but life is going to be a grind, and part of you is going to be like, what's the point? Like, you're going to be inching towards depression at this stage. Then the last thing that happens is that then the noradrenaline also drops. At that stage, you're not going to have any energy anymore. You're going to be exhausted. This is like what people call chronic fatigue syndrome and ME and stuff like that. You're going to be exhausted or you're going to be depressed. Different people experience it in different ways. Some of them, it's like, I don't have the physical energy. Some of it is like, I don't have any emotional desire. Like, you know, I don't want to face the world. I don't want to do anything. They don't experience it as I don't want to. I'll take that back. They experience it as I can't. And I'm not invalidating that. What I'm saying is there's a very clear biological basis for the feeling of I can't get out of bed, I can't function, I can't do anything. It's because you literally don't have any chemicals left that give you energy. Plus, you don't have the cellular energy. So, of course, you're going to feel like I can't, right? I can't get out of bed. I can't function, or at least I can't do any more than the bare minimum, right? And you will start to be attracted to things not only that raise dopamine, but you'll also be attracted to things that raise noradrenaline. So you're more likely to create drama in your life. You're more likely to create stress. You're more likely to put yourself in dangerous situations, to create dangerous situations. You're more likely to be attracted to things that stress you out, whether it's media, whether it's activities, whether it's social relationships. You're going to have people around you that constantly like stress you. That's going to seem attractive to you because while being in a state of anxiety and fear for your life is not fun, it is better than feeling dead and in a bottomless black hole of despair and I can't do anything and what's the point and all the rest of it. So that's the downward spiral. That's the downward progression. I didn't even talk about all the health impacts of any of that. I just talked about how you feel because this is a how you feel episode. But obviously they are myriad and I've talked about them before and I'm sure will again.
Well, so, okay, now seeing where we are on this downward spiral. There's a lot of questions, a lot of places that we can go. What would be what's the next step when somebody's watching this and they've go, oh my God, that sounds just like me. Like, where do they start? What do they do to help get them out of that cycle and be able to lift themselves up to a place of heading towards feeling better and heading towards, a life that is full of the neurochemicals that we need to function and function well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I said that once the cortisol also starts to go low, you feel overwhelmed. Another thing I'll say is you'll feel a lot of lack of mental clarity. You'll feel like a real, brain fog is a big one. People call it, right? Confusion. So that's another one. Okay, so answer your question. First of all, and this is why I'm saying what I'm saying, you have to identify where you are in that process of downhillness, because the advice that works so well for some people that you see working well for other people, that you see working well for people around you, or you hear that's working well for people online or whatever it might be, if it doesn't address your issue, it could be unhelpful at best, and it could actually be counterproductive at worst. It could actually make you worse. So, for instance, doing exercise, if you're near the end of that road, is just going to use up more stress chemicals, suppress thyroid function even more, suppress immune function even more, just make you worse. Dieting is going to make all of that worse, right? And yet, at a certain part of that progression, exercise is going to make you better, and possibly even, depending on what, certainly a lot of type of dieting is going to make you feel better because you're going to be taking in less poison. So it really depends where you are in that progression. And so the reason I track it this way, and by the way, just to connect it with the polyvagal theory, so the first part of what I described is the ventral vagal stage. The middle part of what I described, where the stress chemicals, even dopamine, are still high, but as long as cortisol is still high and norepinephrine is still high, as long as at least one of them is still high, you're in the sympathetic stage a lot of the time. But once all of the stress chemicals are also low, then you're in the dorsal vagal stage. So that is the progression. And I didn't talk about serotonin, but I will. So I think the serotonin is high in both. My theory on this, and this is pure speculation, I don't know, but is that in the sympathetic place, we're more likely to hit the receptors that make us feel superior, because it's a way of trying to cope with this difficult situation that we're in. It's the delusion, narcissism thing. But then as it gets more progressed, it starts... and I think the serotonin gets higher. This is my experience, again, not proven, that then it's at such a high level, it starts to saturate us, and that's where we get into the learned helplessness, apathy, despair, futility, suicidal kind of thing. So I actually think that it's the medium levels that cause the superior behavior, and it's the really high levels that cause the inferior behavior. But I may be wrong, and it may be more complicated than that. But that's just what I perceive. So that's what I've seen in myself and others. So I would say that you need to work out where you are, and then you need to track back in the other direction. So it really depends on what stage someone is at. I would say that no matter what, you need to start building up ATP again, because it's the root problem, like we talked about, right? And that's why metabolism episode, the thyroid episode are absolutely crucial. However, and this is one of the things I think is wrong with the Ray Peat approach, despite him agreeing with a lot of what I said, I see him advising people to eat in a way which might, let's not even say for sure, but might well be optimal if you have a very healthy metabolism and low stress chemicals. Loads of carbohydrates, even loads of sugar, loads of caffeine. These are all things that may possibly be good for you if everything is optimal. They're not if you're not, and they're not going to help you get there. Now, admittedly, some things might. It's true that being on a ketogenic diet, although it has some benefits, as we talked about before, will keep you in with high stress chemicals, because literally the stress chemicals have to be high to break the protein and fat down, to be in ketosis, to break the protein and fat down, and to be able to use them for fuel. So your cortisol has to be high, for instance, to break down amino acids and turn them into glucose to then give you fuel. And it will happen. So, however, having loads of refined sugar, is that good for you in that position? I don't think so. Maybe having some unrefined, like slow release carbohydrates is a good thing to reduce the stress chemicals, with some fiber to buffer it, a fiber that agrees with you, plus some protein, plus some fat, like having, the right combination for whatever your situation is. But anyway, getting your thyroid right. And now the other bit is tricky. If you're in a really bad state, you may actually need some cortisol support, right? We talked about that in the thyroid episode. So you may actually supplement with some adrenal cortex. You may take some herbs that actually increase the cortisol. That actually would need to be done before you even change the thyroid. So that's a specific situation if the person's really collapsed. However, if you're really collapsed, you're probably not going to be able to watch this because you're not going to be able to follow it. So I think I'm speaking mainly to the people who are in the middle, who are in the stress state. And so in that case, I would say what you need to do is you need to work on increasing your cellular energy with all the stuff we talked about in the metabolism episode and the thyroid episode. And then, depending on where you're at, starting to get this GABA dopamine thing right. And so work on increasing those, I would say, rather than working on reducing the stress chemicals. This is where I used to go wrong, focusing more on that. And so one of the things that you want to do is get your hormones checked, right? Because unfortunately, it's not easy to check your dopamine. It's often not helpful to check your GABA because it only tells you what's circulating, not what's being hit by receptors. So even though, it might seem like it makes sense to go straight to the source and check the neurotransmitters, my practical experience and many others is that it's better to actually look at hormones and see what's going on with the hormones.
Can you clarify those specific hormones? I know you've mentioned them before, or if there is a specific test that somebody could say, yeah, either go to a doctor, ask them for this test.
Absolutely. Saliva, cortisol, and DHEA. Talked about that a lot in the cortisol episode. And then thyroids, obviously. Talked about that a lot in the thyroid episodes. Free T3, free T4, TSH, the thyroid antibodies. And then I would do estrogen, prolactin, progesterone, DHEA in the blood again if you want, although it's not crucial. Testosterone, free testosterone. Ideally, DHT, though it's not usually available, so you can live without that. That's basically it. So, I could go through one of those at a time. If your prolactin is high, let's start with that, it means your dopamine is low. Now, if your prolactin is not high, it doesn't necessarily mean your dopamine is high, but still, if your prolactin is high, it means your dopamine is low. So that's an indicator that no matter how you feel, you may feel like you already have plenty of energy because you're still running on stress chemicals, you need to raise your dopamine. So we talked about some strategies for that in the previous episode. If your estrogen is high, that's usually a sign of issues with detoxification. And so that's something we'll talk about more in the detoxification episode, which is upcoming. But that's something that you want to reduce. If your testosterone is low and or your progesterone is low, I would look at the DHEA and the cortisol saliva test. If you're in this position that I think you are, you will probably have, well, let's see. I mean, there's a progression to it. So if you still have high DHEA and high cortisol, congratulations. You're stressed, but you're not that far along yet. You aren't far along yet that it's robbed a lot out of your ability to make sex chemicals. And so it's fairly likely that your testosterone will not be too bad. Your progesterone will not be too bad yet. It's possible it still is because of other factors, but it's fairly likely. So then generally what's recommended, and I'm not against, wait, did I cover them all? Progesterone. Yeah, I'll get to this. So the progesterone is low. Is there any others that I didn't cover yet?
Progesterone, prolactin, estrogen, DHT.
Cortisol. And so if your cortisol is high, then that means, we need to raise some of the other stuff so the body doesn't need to run on cortisol anymore. We need to raise the ATP. We need to raise the dopamine.
Clarifying on the cortisol, because usually cortisol needs to be high in the morning and then it tapers off to the evening, correct? So when you say if your cortisol is high, can you clarify? Yes,
absolutely. Generalizing, like too high, the whole lot. It gets a bit more granular, with specifics. So if your cortisol is generally too high, then I was about to give advice for that. If it's generally too low, then the advice is usually maybe to supplement a bit, although I only do that with a doctor's supervision. I only do all of this with a doctor's supervision, of course. If it tends to be like low in the morning and then it gets high later, it's good that you brought it up. That's more dysregulation. And so in that case, that's like early signs of it starting to collapse, but it hasn't fully collapsed yet. And so you've got to work with a doctor on the specifics of that. They may give you cortisol early in the morning, but they probably won't. They will probably do the other stuff I talked about. They'll probably help you top up your sex hormones, and they should really definitely help you top up your thyroid. And often that brings that cortisol back into balance. I would also say I would focus more on the calming later in the day rather than increasing the cortisol earlier in most cases. Again, of course, unless the doctor says not to. So I would be doing more the GABA strategies to stop it getting high later and to kind of make it low enough that you can relax at the end of the day and get to sleep and sleep through the night and feel refreshed. I'd be focused more on that than I would raising cortisol. Of course, you can raise your cortisol first thing in the morning. If you wake up and you feel like you can barely get out of bed, you can literally stumble to the shower and turn on the cold water. They'll absolutely push the cortisol right up. But if you're already quite depleted, I don't know if that's the best strategy. Obviously, it's for some people. It's like a lot of Wim Hof advocates swear by it, and that's great. But again, that's a little bit of a risky one to me because it could just push you into even more being overstressed.
More stress into the system, which is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, ditto. And of course, intense exercise first thing in the morning will also raise the cortisol. Again, glad you brought it up. One thing you should do is get outside and get sunlight into your eyes. That is good. That's not too stressful for anyone, unlike the cold water. Well, almost everyone. So get outside. Stimulate some cortisol with some real natural sunlight for at least a few minutes. Like Andrew Huberman talks about this a lot, explains a lot of the benefits of it. So check out his work on that if you want to know all the why and what falls of it and how long to do and blah, blah, blah. So that's a natural, healthy way to raise cortisol that is very trouble-free. Sorry, I was thinking so much of biochemistry, I forgot the more lifestyle-y things. And then so the hormones. So I would say, okay, you're definitely going to want to raise the thyroid in most cases, if you're in this position, obviously, but you want to have it checked and do that with a doctor. If the doctor, and they're an optimization doctor, not a normal doctor, if they still don't think that you need it, I mean, great, fair enough. Then don't focus on that. Focus on some of the other metabolism boosting things that we talked about 2 episodes ago to increase the ATP production. That's still absolutely worth doing. Now, in terms of testosterone and progesterone, You absolutely could go on TRT if an hormone optimization doctor thinks it's a good idea. You could absolutely go on progesterone and usually testosterone if you're a woman. Again, if a hormone optimization doctor thinks it's a good idea. I also recommend, though, I feel like most of the time people focus on the middle of the chain. So as we said, it's cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone to DHEA. It's like a chain going down. I actually, and again, Ray Peat talks about this, I'm a big fan these days of starting at the top of the chain. So supplementing a bit of pregnenolone and supplementing a bit of DHEA. I say supplementing because unlike the middle of the chain constituents, they are both available to buy as a supplement. You don't need a prescription. You don't need doctor supervision. I rarely talk about dosage, but I will in this one case, which is almost all the supplements sold with those things give you too much. I really feel like the optimal amount of pregnenolone is something like 10 milligrams or even less, and ditto for DHEA. And usually they're sold in like 25, 50, 100 milligram capsules. So there's sometimes liquid versions that are lower dose, so you can, just have a couple of drops or whatever. The issue with pregnenolone and DHEA is if your body's already in a super stressed state, it could turn it into the wrong thing. So if your body's already funneling a lot to cortisol, it could just make more cortisol out of it and make the cortisol even higher. If your body's already funneling a lot to estrogen, it can make more estrogen out of it and make it even higher. So generally, that's what we find. Too much pregnenolone, a lot of people get anxious, overstimulated. That's because the body's making too much cortisol out of it. And with DHEA, it's not as noticeable, but it can be over time. People notice that they're creating too much estrogen out of it. So a little bit, though, in combination of everything else I've talked about and the healthy lifestyle, can be really helpful in a lot of cases. So
look again, at the doses. Look at something smaller then. Yeah.
Yeah, low dose. So top of the chain. So it's kind of give your body just a building block and let it decide, what it wants to make more of. But be aware it might decide to make the wrong thing. So that's why I only have a little bit just to support the whole system. And then, we talked about this a lot in the last episode, so I won't go over it again, but just to remind, I'm also a big fan actually these days of having right at the other end. So rather than having testosterone, which, shuts down sperm production, shrinks your testicles, you're then dependent on it. Like, there's some downsides to TRT. I'm more of a fan of very, very small amounts of DHT these days, which again, I think I talked last time why that is. So I prefer that. I'm very glad that my testosterone was high and I never was tempted to go down the TRT route. And that I discovered that, it was DHT that I was lacking more than testosterone, but it helped me realize, the major benefit that testosterone has that DHT doesn't is that it's anabolic. Anabolic meaning muscle building. So, we talk about how in our modern society, some people talk about how there's a glut of lack of manliness. I don't know if you would agree with that, Chrissy, but compared to a few generations ago, right, where guys were so much more stoic, so much more strong, unfazable, like the kind of people who, men used to be sent to war and have to, deal with that or do these really hard, grueling jobs all day. And they were still less depressed and anxious than we are now, So there's something to be said for that. And I think it's interesting that now men either are kind of lacking in manliness or there's a lot of them taking steroids or TRT. Almost every celebrity you see with huge muscles is on steroids. There's very, very few people who are natural. But then interestingly, testosterone is way more anabolic and it's way less androgenic than DHT. So there's a lot of looking manly. There's a lot of having huge muscles and being very physically imposing, but there's not as much feeling manly. And when you actually talk to a lot of these guys, they're still full of insecurities and depression and anxieties and all the rest of it. So it's interesting how the culture has gone from what I suspect was a high DHT population of men who are very manly, but not that muscular, to this split now where you have some men who are very feminine and some men who are very manly looking, but still not as manly as a few generations ago, if that makes sense. So I'm a big fan of optimizing DHT rather than testosterone. It doesn't make you look as manly as testosterone does, maybe, from the perspective of, giving you the big muscles, the huge muscles, but it makes you feel more that way, is my understanding, because it hits GABA and it hits dopamine better than just testosterone does. And for women, I'm not against progesterone supplementation. I don't feel it has anywhere near as much downsides as the testosterone injections, so I'm much more of a fan of that. But I still think it's interesting that how beneficial the aloe P is. So again, the metabolite of progesterone, again, in the same way that I was a high testosterone guy, like over the limit and still didn't act like it, I meet women who have fairly high levels of progesterone, either naturally or because they're supplementing it, but who are still quite over emotional, overwhelmed, anxious. And I'm thinking, just like with the testosterone DHT, is it the case that because they're in a stress cycle, their body is not converting enough of that progesterone into the thing that maybe actually matters, like allopregnanolone and quite probably other things that we haven't really discovered and fully understood yet. And so then it could help to actually supplement with the allopregnanolone as well. So again, all speculation, but so nothing against middle of the chain hormone optimization overseen by a doctor, but you could also consider in the supplement world, supplementing with top of the chain with pregnenolone DHEA, very small doses, and even consider bottom of the chain metabolites, maybe possibly, if you're an experimental kind of person. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And of course, I'm sure we're probably going to get comments and going, I don't know where to start and I don't know where to look. But, but it's definitely helps with the basic identifier of actually where to start looking of, okay, no, this is where I resonate. This is where I feel. Because you've got to know where that part is to begin. And you said something that was also so helpful, which is the solution or the thing you're trying to implement to, let's say, lose weight or do this. If on that scale, if you don't have enough of that ATP already, that's just going to put you further back. And then you're going to feel like, why can't I follow through? I still haven't achieved this. And it's just going to be this knock-on cycle. So that was absolutely stated very clearly and very helpful information, because a lot of people feel that these are the steps to do it. And it's like, well, actually, no, not for you, because here's the way to work it back. You've got to build yourself up first before you can even think about adding that into your program.
Yeah, rather than reducing calories and slowing down your metabolism even more, why don't you speed up your metabolism so then you don't have to reduce your calories? Is that what you mean, that part of it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, that was really, really great, Elwin. I know we're coming to our time, so I just want to ask you quickly, if anything else that you want to add.
Yeah, I'll add one more part of it, because it may seem that I answered that in a kind of strange way, in the sense that, so I talked about, increase your cellular energy, but I didn't really discuss that thing about, how do you balance the yin and yang? How do you balance the dopamine and GABA? You can do that. You can go, I'm a bit lacking in energy and motivation at the moment. I'm going to do some of the things that Elwin suggested for increasing dopamine. Or, I'm finding it difficult to relax. I'm finding myself getting too serious, too uptight, too tense, too difficult, disturbed sleep, overthinking, whatever. I'll do more things to increase GABA. So you can be in do things to increase GABA, to calm down, do things to increase dopamine, to increase motivation. But the reason I didn't go down that angle, instead started talking about hormones, is because I'm starting to understand that if you optimize the hormones, they'll do that for you. You don't have to be taking a dopamine thing in the morning or a GABA thing at night, or you don't have to be taking coffee, etc., in the morning and alcohol, etc., at night. Like, your body will actually manage that for you if you get the hormones right. Now, I know, again, we discussed this at the beginning of the last episode for a long time, but I know when I talk about supplementation, people are like, yeah, but why do we need that? Isn't it better to be natural? So let me just address that again super quick. Yes, it is better to be natural. Yes, it is better not to take any of these things, ideally. However, first of all, we have to accept reality as it is again, right? So if you're in a position where you got yourself in such a mess, you're in so far along that chain, you want to skip right back to perfection, it's pretty difficult, right? Second of all, I actually believe, and again, this is my speculation, this is not proven, that a lot of the reason we are such a mess hormonally, which then has all of these other knock-on effects. When I say hormonally, I'm talking about thyroid, sex hormones, and adrenal hormones. Those are basically what we've been discussing the whole time, right? We haven't even gotten to the other ones like insulin and blood sugar, but we'll leave that for another day, even though it's kind of relevant to stress because we've already done so much. But so why are those hormonal systems out of balance in the first place that you need to be thinking about this, that you need to be taking all these, everyday drugs to get through the day or doing all these addictive activities or whatever to feel okay, or following my advice, which may not feel great either because it's just another thing that you have to take. And I really think it's the toxicity. And there's some proof for that. There's lots of proof, for instance, of the estrogens in the water, the plastics, and all the rest of it. And again, if we think of estrogen as a stress chemical, something that massively raises estrogen unnaturally is going to raise cortisol. It's going to raise norepinephrine. It's going to raise prolactin. It's going to raise serotonin if we're right about that. And then it's going to reduce dopamine. It's going to reduce GABA. It's going to reduce. So do you see how like one little thing, like maybe flooding the body with xenoestrogens could tip it in this direction? And then we add, loads and loads of other factors. We talked about all the reasons why the thyroid might be underfunctioning, for instance, but the thyroid's underfunctioning, then there's not enough pregnenolone. There's not enough pregnenolone, then your body's going to choose between having enough stress hormone and enough sex hormone. It can't make optimal amounts of both. And then you're already stressed because of something, because of life, because of this, because of that, and then it's going to funnel it more in the stress direction, and there's not enough sex hormones, and then there's not enough dopamine, it's not enough GABA. It's a whole chain reaction. And so it's kind of tricky to go from such a mess to perfection with just eating vegetables or eating meat or doing an exercise routine or doing a meditation practice. As much as all these things may be great and beneficial, or doing a diet or doing a cleanse even, right? As much as all those things may be great and beneficial, if they're not, look, if they work for you, they work for you. You probably wouldn't be watching this, but you might be. Anything that's worked for you, fantastic. Tell us about it in the comments underneath. But I'm more speaking to the people who've tried a lot of the obvious stuff, a lot of the mainstream alternative stuff, and it hasn't worked, or it hasn't worked well enough. And that's what we're really talking about. If all the usual stuff, so if you just don't go to bed early and then you don't get enough sleep and you feel ill, and if the advice, go to bed earlier, works, you manage to fall asleep, you manage to stay asleep, you wake up feeling refreshed, great. But I'm more talking to the people who, if they try to go to bed early, they can't fall asleep because their mind is racing, or they feel anxious, or they start worrying about this, or they wake up a few hours later. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm more speaking to the people who the obvious advice doesn't work for. But please try the obvious advice first, right? Exercise, eat well, sleep, get fresh air, get sunlight, all of that stuff. I'm assuming you already tried all of that and it either didn't work or it made you worse. And this is like the next level. Okay, nothing else has worked. Than this.
Beautiful, Elwin. I know, I'm sure there'll be more questions even when we hit close, so we may carry this on, but this has been absolutely fantastic and very appreciative of all the explanations and going in deeper. And also to everyone, thank you for joining us. And if you do have those questions or those comments, please do leave them for us, because that inspires us to dig deeper and be able to help you and provide more information for you on your own journey. So thanks again. Please remember to hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, I want to tell you about a way that you can support the podcast while also getting great deals on high quality supplements that Elwin and I personally use. And that's Feel Younger. What I love about Feel Younger is that they have great quality products with minimal fillers at a very affordable price. You can call their customer support team 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in my experience, they're very helpful and friendly. And the thing I love most of all is the amazing descriptions that Elwin has written about each product category on that topic. And each product has so much education on it that I've actually learned more from reading the descriptions than I have from a lot of articles. So to support the podcast, please use Feel Younger for all your supplement needs. And to let them know we sent you, use promo code RejuvenateMe for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net. That's 20% off your first order using promo code RejuvenateMe at feelyounger.net.